Mark still there? Yeah. He's on the move.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes, and
I'm
I'm
just
there's some
walking.
home. I want to get back on some homework that I did yesterday.
Okay, what
Uh,
do you got?
yeah. So first of all, I verified what I thought, but I wanted to make sure black and white. Rashi and Chumash writes that the law, if food a food came in contact with a liquid, right? You had cut the grain, and then it subsequently came in contact with liquid. Now we said the liquid prepares the food now to be able to receive contamination from something that has the power to contaminate. We
Right,
said it has to have the liquid. The question was
right.
asked, what about if the liquid dried up? It had the liquid, it dried up, would it still be able to receive contamination? And we said yes, and we said yes. Once it had the liquid, even if the liquid dried up, once you got liquid on it, now that's called it's prepared to receive contamination. So the fact that it dried up will
So that
not.
means that means any prepared, any like a loaf of bread can
Right,
receive contamination.
exactly. It receives contamination because it already had the water with the flour. Right. That's what
Right.
we were saying. And the other thing that was asked yesterday, that if you have a mashkin, a liquid that is contaminated, right? We said, let's say a liquid that came from a sheretz, let's say a liquid that came in contact with a sheretz, like this, let's say the dead mouse or whatever came in contact with a liquid and contaminated the liquid. If that liquid touches a food, let's say an apple, and the apple never had any liquid on it until now, but now the liquid, a liquid that was contaminated comes in contact with the apple. So we say that it would contaminate, even though it didn't have liquid before, but now this liquid that is contaminated comes in contact with the apple. So it's liquidation, if you use that word, liquidation, becoming wet, and the contamination comes simultaneously. And therefore, it is considered, it would be ready, it would receive its contamination.
That's what Nathan was asking.
Right, exactly.
Once it's wet and the water's contaminated, is it
It will,
some like 1 second, 1 millisecond later, it's wet and contaminated?
right. So it's either, maybe it's maybe simultaneously might come at the same time. However it's formulated. But so one of the rabbis I spoke to, he said it comes simultaneously. But again, whatever. The bottom line is, it would be contaminated. Okay, we now on 14b. 14b, at the point, most probably it's B1. We'll take a look. I'm just looking at the Hebrew for a second. We're going back we're still finishing up some of the 18 decrees that were made in the attic. And we're now on 14b2. Vakelim shenitmu b'mashkin. We're now utensils that became contaminated through liquid. We said if you have a utensil that became contaminated through a liquid, right? So that liquid had a level of contamination, and that liquid came in contact with a utensil, right? It came in contact with this clock or a piece of clothing. Now that utensil, if it comes in contact with truma, if it touches truma, it will invalidate the truma. No, now the truma would be invalidated. You will not be able to eat it. You would burn it. We'll see that in the Gemara. We'll discuss what do you do with that truma once it's invalidated, but it cannot be eaten. Once this clock, this utensil, came in contact with a liquid that was contaminated, now that utensil has the power. They made a decree, a rabbinic decree, that this utensil, if it comes in contact with truma, it will invalidate it. Meaning to say, on a Torah level, this utensil will not have a power to invalidate the truma, but the rabbinic law says that it will contaminate, it will invalidate it. Adam, is that clear?
Could you do that one more time?
Yes, we're saying we have a utensil. The utensil became contaminated from a liquid that was contaminated. It was a nice pure utensil, but it became contaminated through a liquid that was contaminated. Now that utensil it will invalidate if it comes in contact with truma, it will invalidate truma if it comes to that utensil. Now, if we're saying the Gemara now is going to discuss the case, as Mr. Haber always say, what's the case? Case, law, and reason, right? It's going to discuss the case that obviously we're talking a case that somehow this utensil will not have the power to invalidate truma, but it's a rabbinic decree that this utensil has the power, Simon, to invalidate truma. So the Gemara is we're going to hear the Gemara is going to play out the case. Okay, I think you'll get it clear, Mark, and everybody. We're on this first paragraph, on the first side in the bottom paragraph. The utensil that became contaminated as a result of a liquid that was from a contaminated liquid. So the Gemara says, "Kalim didn't itmu b'mashkin demai." What was this liquid that contaminated the utensil? Ilema b'mashkin dezav. You know, we spoke about a zav. A zav is a man who has an unusual discharge. It's not the normal discharge. And the Torah says he's tamei. When he has that discharge, he's tamei. But not only is he tamei, and if he comes in contact with someone, he will contaminate a person. His spit, his saliva, if it comes in contact with someone, that also would contaminate a person. Okay, is that clear, everybody? The spit of that person. So the Gemara says, if we're talking about the liquid that comes out from a zav, and it's different liquids, you know, what's included in the liquids is even his urine, also his spit. They have the power to contaminate. And so the Gemara says, if that liquid of the zav came in contact with the utensil, that liquid has the power to contaminate the utensil on a total level, that utensil will be a rishon, once removed, and that's a rishon, has the power to invalidate food from a total level, right? We said a rishon, once removed from the source, doesn't have the power to contaminate a person or a utensil, but has the power to contaminate a food. We're talking now about food of truma that came in contact with this utensil. So if the utensil was a rishon, if the utensil received its contamination from the spit of the saliva of a zav, so then the utensil has the power to contaminate the food. So on a Torah level, we don't need any rabbinic, morning Nathan, we don't need a rabbinic enactment to invalidate the truma if the utensil received its contamination from the saliva of the zav. Ksiv, and the Gemara brings a pasuk that has the power to contaminate the saliva of a zav, because the pasuk says v'chi yorok hazav b'tahar. It's if a person goes ahead and spits on if a person spits, a zav spits on someone who is tahar, the person has to go ahead and wash his clothing. His clothing has to go to the mikveh. Now we see, and he has to go to the mikveh. So we see that he becomes tamei, and also we see it also makes that his garments become tamei. So we see the fact that it's going to make his garments become tamei. That means we give the spit a status of an av, just like the source itself, and therefore the garments become contaminated. So So, and the Gemara says, also, we also say, we also learn from this pasuk, ma shebiyad tahor temetilach, that not if something is, if the zav is carrying something, if the zav is carrying an item, and that item and the spit goes onto that item, so the person who's carrying the item, even though he doesn't touch the spit itself, but the fact that he's carrying the spit because it went onto something, let's say it went onto his clothing or whatever it is, if he's carrying it, that also would go ahead and contaminate the person who's carrying it. So at the end of the day, we see that the liquid has the power, the liquid of the zav, the spirit of the zav has the power to contaminate the person. And of course, the contaminated person has the power to contaminate utensils on a Torah level. So since it can contaminate on a Torah level, so we don't need an enactment of the rabbis to say that that utensil has the power to invalidate truma. It would even contaminate truma. So the Gemara says, Ella, what's the case talking about? We're talking about now 114b3. Ella b'mashkin haboim machmat sheretz. The case was the following. We had a sheretz, one of these creeping animals that have the power to contaminate when they are dead. And this creeping animal came in contact, this dead animal came in contact with liquid. So now, morning. So that liquid becomes a rishon, right? It was once removed. This water that the sheretz came in contact with becomes a rishon. Now that water does not have power to contaminate a utensil. As we said, once removed from the source does not have the status and power to contaminate a person or a utensil. It could contaminate food. Either the spit, the av itself, right? That only would be water that's from the only water that contaminated utensil. If there again, if a dead animal touches the utensil become contaminated. Right, the liquid that we spoke about was the liquid, right, right. The gzera, the enactment was that if a contaminated liquid touches the utensil, that utensil, if it comes in contact with truma, will invalidate the truma. That's what we said. That means it, right, it's a level of, it's Lisa Shani. It has a level of that it has the power to contaminate. We're saying on a right. We're saying on a Torah level. There's Torah level and there's rabbinic level. Right. Our enactment that we say, bringing Nathan, right, that the liquid, the contaminated liquid, we have to identify what is that liquid. How did that liquid become contaminated? That contaminated liquid comes in contact with the utensil. If that utensil now comes in contact with truma, that utensil will now invalidate the truma. Is that what we're saying? Correct? Good morning, Emmanuel. Good morning, Asaf. On a rabbinic level. Meaning, that's if it's a rishon, right? If it's a rishon, it will never. If it's a, the question is, what's identify the liquid, Mark? The liquid. We have a liquid that was contaminated that came in contact with the utensil. What level is the liquid? That's the question. So the Gemara says, if it's the level of a av, we have a liquid that could be an avatuma. What's that liquid that could be an avatuma? The saliva, the urine of a zav. And that the Gemara says that can't be the case. Because if that liquid's an av, then on a Torah level, it would contaminate the utensil. If this liquid, if this liquid,
talking rabbinic, it can't be those two things. It has to be a different type of liquid.
Has to be a different type of liquid. So, therefore, what is this liquid what is this liquid? That liquid is a Rishon. Right. I mean, maybe a liquid might be an Av. Liquid, a person who touches the carcass will be an Av. We're talking about. But we have to see what the liquid that touches the corpse, because we find a person that touches it. It might be liquid that touches it, maybe, because we have a statement that a dead person is considered the Avi Avot. He has a status of a like a grandfather, like that. If you come, for a person comes in contact with that dead body, the person becomes an Av. Right. So we have to see what the liquids that come in contact with it. But we have to know what the liquids will become contaminated. But what level of contamination it'll have, that would have to be looked at. Then the Gemara could have said. Yeah, so we're obviously talking that the liquid is right. So the liquid, right? The liquid that we're talking about here, that's coming in contact with the utensil, has to be a Rishon, a Sheni. It can't be an Av. So if it would be a dad, if that liquid would have it, then it would invalidate the utensil on a Torah level. Right. So therefore, the Gemara said, what is the case of this liquid? So the Gemara says, we're talking about the liquid that came in contact with one of these dead animals, right? A sheret, let's say the mouse. The dead mouse touched this liquid. So what is this liquid? A Rishon. Correct? The dead mouse touches the liquid. The dead mouse, let's say, is the source of the Av, and the liquid becomes a what? A Rishon. Okay? Now, that's not questionable. What's questionable about that? No, not a dead animal. If you touch it, a dead animal touches of anything, the item becomes a Rishon. That's clear. Okay. So now this liquid is a Rishon because it touched a dead animal. And now this liquid touches the utensil. A Rishon, once removed, touches the utensil, does not do anything, this has no power on a Torah level to do anything to the utensil. But on the rabbinic level, the rabbis gave that liquid a status that it has the power to contaminate this utensil. Why did the rabbis give that? Why did the rabbis create that enactment? Because the rabbis were concerned, if you're going to say this liquid comes in contact with the utensil, and then the utensil comes in contact with truma, if you're going to say it doesn't invalidate it, the Gemara you will also say any liquid, even a liquid of a zav. People will make a mistake and say that if a liquid of a zav, which does have the power to contaminate a utensil, because we said the liquid of the zav has a status like the zav himself, that the liquid is like an Av, is like a dad. So therefore, in order to protect that law, the rabbi said that if the liquid that came in contact with a dead animal touches a utensil, which on a Torah level, nothing happened to the utensil, but because of the possible confusion, people make a mistake. So therefore, the rabbi said, we're going to give it the status that it could contaminate this utensil, and if the utensil subsequently comes in contact with liquid, with a food, it would invalidate the truma. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, "Ela b'mashkin haboim machmat sheret." It came in contact with the liquid. The liquid came in contact with this dead animal. Ugzeiram yeshua mashkim dezav, because we wanted to protect the situation of the liquid of the zav comes in contact with the utensil, which would invalidate the truma on a Torah level. So therefore, they created.
So people wouldn't make a mistake. Correct.
Now the Gemara says the following question: the Yadayim, with the zav, right? The Yadayim, Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel Goza. The Gemara listed one of the 18 enactments that were done was the hands. That your hands, if your hands come in contact with truma, the truma will be contaminant, will be not invalid if you didn't wash your hands. If you didn't wash your hands, that's called stam yadayim, person's hands that weren't washed. He's not contaminated. He's touching it. He's not contaminated. It's about his hand. But if his hands touch the truma, it will invalidate the truma. And we said why. We explained in the Gemara before. Why did the rabbi say my hands would invalidate truma? Because they were people's hands move all around. They touch all different things. They can touch dirty things, dirty places. Invalidated means it would be given to the Kohen, belongs to the Kohen, but it would have to be. It could be used as fuel. It has to be burnt. It can't be consumed. Forbidden to be eaten. It belongs to the Kohen. If the Kohen wants to give it to a non-Kohen to use as fuel, fine. No, it's truma. It can't be eaten. Nobody can eat. Done eating. This food, this truma is invalidated. If your hands, what? Swap for other truma?
Can I take it back? Like you make this dish.
No. Once it's truma, it's truma. You can't. There's no redemption on this thing. No, you can't. No. It doesn't seem. It has to be burnt. It has to be burnt. This truma has to be burnt. So the Gemara says, this enactment, as we said, because he wanted to protect the truma. Yes. That's hegdesh. Hegdesh, something that was hegdesh that became tamei, or that had a blemish, But even hegdesh, say it again. Something is hegdesh, and then it, let's say, has a blemish. We find about an animal. If you have an animal, you give it to and then you can redeem the kedusha, correct? But here, this having the food the truma becoming contaminated, you can't take it off. It remains.
If it's not contaminated, I can't take it off?
No, it's not contaminated. It's truma. It goes to the Kohen, and the Kohen eats it. You can't be popped off. No, the truma is not like hegdish. Hegdish has that opportunity to redeem. Morning, Gary.
Truma has to be given by the non-Kohen
To the Kohen,
who then eats it.
right.
Is he allowed to burn it instead of eating it himself?
He's not allowed to. He has a right to. I don't think he's allowed to ruin the truma by using it as food. I would think it has to be eaten.
Let's
Yes.
say it becomes contaminated either before you gave it to him or after you gave it to him. Then he has to burn it.
He has to burn it.
And he's
Use it as,
also
and he could benefit from that burning. He could use it as fuel.
He's allowed to give it as a gift to somebody who can also.
I would think.
burn it?
I would think so. That's what I
Okay.
would think so.
And when you say benefit, can he sell it to somebody as fuel?
I
You
would.
said
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. I would think so. Yes.
Okay.
That
It's
yes.
not consumed.
Not consuming. The same way. That's why truma is cheap because it's limited. I mean, good truma. If the Kohen wants to sell to another Kohen, the price is
Right, 'cause
pretty.
you can only sell it to
The
another.
Kohen only the only ones can eat it. So the Gemara says this enactment, like we said, was to protect truma, because if people's hands are not washed before they come in contact with truma, they could really make the truma not so pretty, by coming in contact with it with hands that might have not been so clean. The rabbi said, in order that the truma should be in a nice, proper state, that it shouldn't be, looking bad. So the rabbi said you should make sure you wash your hands. You have to wash your hands before you come in contact with the truma. If you don't wash your hands, now you're going to invalidate the truma. So the Gemara says, you told me you're stating it as part of the enactments of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. You're listing it as a enactment of the students of Shammai and the students of Hillel. But the Gemara says, but what do you mean? It seems that Hillel and Shammai themselves made the Gzeirah. The rabbis of the students, the Rosh Yeshivas, not the students of Shammai and Beit Hillel. That's the most question. V'yadayim, Talmidei Shammai v'Hillel Gaza, Yadayim is the students of Shammai and Hillel made the Gezerah. It's Hillel v'Shammai. Shammai v'Hillel goes at the Tanya. Yossi ben Yoezer, East Sreda. Yossi ben Yoezer is from a certain place called Sreda in the Holy Land of Israel. And Yossi ben Yochanan, Ish Yerushalayim. And Yossi ben Yochanan, who was in the Jerusalem. And they said the following. Gozru, they made a Gezerah. So they made a Gezerah. What was the Gezerah? Tuma al Eretz Amim. They made a Gezerah on outside the land of Israel. All lands outside the land of Israel, that people, the non-Jewish community, wasn't so careful about how they buried their dead. And since they're not careful how they buried the dead, you might be walking on a grave. And the person might be walking on a grave. In New York, on the Lower East Side, there's a Spanish-Portuguese cemetery from like the late 1600s. Like the first things that the people did, they were very careful. Spanish-Portuguese, they have one right on Fifth Avenue, the second one on 11th Street. People don't even know it's there. Recommend everyone to go there. It's on between 5th and 6th Avenue on 11th Street. There's a second Spanish-Portuguese cemetery, maybe from 1805. They were very careful. First thing they did, they set up a Jewish cemetery. They were very careful about it. But the non-Jewish world doesn't seem they didn't place as much to go to place the person in a certain spot.
In the non-Jewish world, or Jews not in Jerusalem?
The non-Jewish world.
Non-Jewish world.
Non-Jewish world. They were not careful.
Can non-Jews give the same level of tuma, the non-Jewish corpse, as a Jewish corpse?
They contaminate a Kohen if you come in contact with it. But if there's a question if you're in the tent if the dead body is in the tent, whether of a non-Jew, whether we'll contaminate the Kohen or the person in the tent. But if you come in contact with them, it would. Right, tree, because that's like tent. It's like that because then you're in the tent, right? Right. Even if it's not right, if a tree's over a body, if let's say there's a body over here, right. But that tree, because you're right, but why? Because you're under the tent. But that tree is like a tent, which is over the grave, and it's and the other area. So even though there's no grave on that sidewalk that you're standing, but you can't, the Kohen can't walk there.
But not a non.
But right, non-Kohen will have no problem. We don't have a problem becoming contaminated. What'd you say? No. I just want to show. I just want to show you how they were careful that the first things that Jews did when they come to a country, they would cemetery would be a first thing that they would be very careful about. I'm just showing you that there's alacrity, if that's the right word, in their diligence in cemeteries and the burial. But the non-Jewish world, it seems that they would bury people anywhere. If the guy died, they would dig 6 feet and they would put the person there. And what you say? Yeah, and you don't know. Yeah.
Have you been to Morocco with the hundreds and hundreds of Jewish graves all over the desert?
Yeah, but the thing was, Mark, they didn't always mark it. The Kevel Rachel is marked. Keep giving a mark, but the non-Jewish graves, they weren't so careful to mark them, and therefore they made a gzeirah that if you're walking outside the land of Israel, it's like you become outside of Israel. It's outside of Chutz La'aretz, the Eretz Amim, on the non-Jewish lands, not in Israel itself. Throughout Israel, they would be careful, at least according to this Gemara. The only right, and anywhere any Kohen will walk will technically, according to this Gzeirah, if they would subsequently come in contact with Truma, that would actually make that would invalidate it to be eaten. not only a Kohen, it would come at anybody. Everything would be outside. If the truma, meaning outside of Israel. If truma came outside of the land of Israel, right, and you invalidated.
But as long as you wash your hands, have you?
No, that wouldn't help, because here we're talking about a tumat mate. This is the status of a dead. We treat it like it came in contact with a dead body. A dead body. If you person comes in contact with a dead body, washing the hands doesn't do the trick. We need the ashes of the paraduma to remove the contamination. So until that happens, the person is in a status of contamination.
Not only every Jew who is currently outside of the land of Israel, if the Jew in the land of Israel leaves the land of Israel and comes back to the land of Israel.
According to the logic, what you're saying should be correct. That the land of Israel.
Saying, even if you didn't come in contact with them.
Right, you could, because you're standing on top of it anywhere, right.
You got out, but it played boom, you touch the ground.
Right, if we consider you that person as if there was too much, as if he came in contact with a dead body. To be continued, everybody. Time flies when you're having fun. All the best. We welcome everybody to the class. We're here every morning, 6:45. We take you at any time, right, Gary? Anytime. We leave the lights open. It's not Motel 6. Not that Motel 6. It's Asaf and Emmanuel. Have a great day. I'll see you upstairs.